Hi everyone, welcome back to another tutorial. As a lot many of you have asked, what are the different materials that we can use in silicone molds, etc. in our lives, I thought I'll make a video out of it. So here the first thing that I'm using is resin. Now as always, whatever product I talk about or used, I will try and link below the products used in the description of the video, so do check that out. So the first thing that I'm going to use is resin. The resin that I'm using is Craft Angles Art Epoxy resin. It is a 2:1 ratio. As you can see, I have mixed 20 grams resin and 10 grams hardener. This is done by weight, the measure, and you can see I'm mixing it thoroughly. And you can also add white pigment in this resin to make your molds already colored white, so it's easier for you when you prime it with gesso, etc. whenever you are doing your mixed media or decoupage project. So I have also done the same. I have added some white liquid acrylics by Craft Angles into it, and it has kind of given that white shade to my resin. And then as you can see, I start pouring it into the mold. Now the thing about resin is it is like a viscous liquid, so the pouring etc is very easy. Once you start pouring, it will kind of self level and fill in all the nooks and crannies, so it is easier to work with. However, you cannot mix like 500 ml of resin in one go and then fill on all the molds, because as the time passes the resin does get thicken up. So I would suggest, if you are very new, start with like 50 to 100 ml of resin while filling the mold. And once you get a hang of it, you can do 200 to 300 ml of resin in one go. I normally mix nowadays, I mix like 300 ml of resin in one go and pour it in all my molds. It takes me around half an hour to 45 minutes, which is the pot life of the resin. So it works quite well. But as I said, you have to be very quick about it. You cannot be extremely slow while pouring resin, because it does get thicken up as the time passes. Uh, what I'll be doing is I'll also be discussing the pros and cons of each and every product that I am using here right now. Now, remember that this is my personal opinion, your timings could vary from what I'm using here. So, it all depends on what you are comfortable with using here. I'm letting you know my opinions on what I prefer, what I don't prefer. So with resin, you have to give it at least 6 to 8 hours for it to dry before demolding, because art epoxy takes that much time to cure. I have demolded these after 6 to 7 hours, and as you will see that they are quite pliable. So you can kind of curve it around a bottle or a jar if you are, doing a curved surfaces. So if you're doing a curved surfaces, after 6 hours, you can remove it and shape it howsoever you want. If you let it dry for 12 to 14 hours, it will dry flat and it will be very hard to shape. Of course, you can heat it and shape it, but I don't know how best the shape could be retained. If you are doing a shaped project on which you want to use a mold, I will highly suggest you demold it in 6 hours, 6 to 7 hours. Now that is currently, with the India climate that we have. Now, also, if you demold it like after 6 to 8 hours, you can see that whatever overhangs that you have, like resin is spilled out of molds, and you have that kinks on the side, etc. It is very easy to remove that with a scissor, because resin is like a plastic kind of material, right? So it will not just remove the cuts like how you would do it in a clay by just using your fingers. So you'll have to use scissors to kind of cut the excess. So while you are pouring resin into molds, just make sure you do keep your excess resin spills to minimum, or else you'll have to sit and cut the molds like how I am doing over here. Uh, it is possible, but it is a bit time consuming. Now with resin, the pros are that it is very lightweight. So if you are using a lot of resin in your project, and if you want to hang it, the your project will be very light as compared to others. Also, resin, once cured, is like it will not break or anything. So it is very durable material to work with. The con is, of course, the handling of resin. You'll have to wear a mask, you'll have to work in a well ventilated area, you'll have to wear gloves, all those things that you have to take care, because resin is after all a chemical medium. Now I'm quite comfortable with all that nowadays, so I tend to use resin a lot in my mixed media projects, because as I said, more durable and lightweight. Now, the second thing that I'm using here is Fevicryl molded clay, another crowd favorite. Now, this is an epoxy based clay. So, what it means is you have a part A and part B of the clay, which you mix, and then it creates like a clay, which is very hard and durable because it contains a resin in it. Okay, so if you were a kid, you would know something like MSeal, which you would have, used in India. This is quite similar, but for artists. So with clays, always remember to prep your molds with a lot of powders because you want your clay to be easily removed from molds. So that is very important, which is what I did just a minute back, where I prepped my mold with a lot of powder using a brush. And now what I'm doing is I'm mixing that part A and part B of clay, and it will then, after a couple of minutes, it becomes like a homogeneous clay mixture. And then I'm like pushing it into the molds to show you how you can use it in the mold. So with clays, you will have a lot of muscle power that you will need to use because you will need to push the clays into the crevices of the molds. So that is why you'll have to, use a lot of muscle power whenever you are using clays. Now, the pros of this is that you, after 1.5 hour, you can easily demold this, and you will get a very good impression, and you will see that it has already started drying and taking a shape. Now, after an hour, it is still quite moldable. So you can mold it around the curved surfaces and everything. So it works very well for that. As I said, it takes a lot less time as compared to resin. So that is, of course, a pro. Like if you are doing a project during a live, or, if you want to get the molds output immediately while you're making a project, this seems to be a great solution. The con with this is that it is very heavy. Like out of all the four products that I'm going to use, this clay is the most dense, and hence it is the most heaviest. And the other con is, of course, you'll have to use a lot of muscle power of your hand to kind of push the clay into the mold. Now, another thing that I'm doing is I'm actually showing you different molds in different products that I'm using. So in the first one, I showed you the regular Chinese molds. Here I am using a Stamperia mold, and in future I'll show you another type of Stamperia mold as well as a Prima mold. So you could technically use all these four items in all these molds, irrespective of, whether it's Chinese, it's Prima, it's Stamperias, different kind of molds, etc. So don't worry about that. So that was my thought on mold it. It is the fastest to dry and cure. So, if you are less on time, this works perfect. However, it's the heaviest. So, the pros and cons, depending on what you want, you could decide for yourself. Now, for the third one, I am using something called as Craft Angles Art Cast. Now, this is a casting medium. It's an alternative to resin. So, it is an eco-friendly version of resin. It is quite powerful as resin once cured. However, you don't have to take a lot of precautions. So you can see I'm just using my hands with this. If you are sensitive with things like glues and varnish smells, etc., because after all, this does contain a little bit of acrylics, I would suggest you can wear a mask. So the ratio of mixing is 2.5 times the powder to 1 time the liquid. So here I have used around 42 grams of liquid, and into 2.5 times of powders. Okay, and as you can see, once I mixed, if you feel that the mixture is getting a little bit thicker, you can always add a little bit spritz of water, like how I did over here there. But don't add a lot of water. Like 5 ml is okay, but don't add like 30-40 ml, because that will break the strength of your cast, and then you will say that my casting pieces are breaking, but that is because you have added a lot of water, which will break the strength of it. Now, as you can see here, you don't have a lot of time like how you have with resin. It starts curing very quickly. As soon as the two products starts mixing, you will see it starts becoming pasty, and then it will start thickening up. So this will dry very fast as compared to resin, but that also means that you have to work very fast. So always work in small batches like how I am doing here. And you can see how quickly I poured it. And then what I'm doing is like how you roll the fondant on a mold. I'm similarly using a I'm scraping the excess and I'm kind of rolling it throughout the mold, and that is how I fill the art cast. And this is not sticky like resin, etc. So this is breeze to work with as compared to resin, and this will dry like normally you can demold like more thicker pieces in 2 hours or so, 1.5 to 2 hours. However, my molds, the mold that I have used, which is a Prima frame mold, is very thin. So I did not want to take chance of it breaking. So that is why I let it cure for 4 hours before I demolded it. But after 4 hours, you can see how easy it was for me to demold these. So again, if you are using deeper molds, you can demold it in like 2 hours. So similar to your molded clay or like air dry clay. But if you want to make it more strong for thin clay molds, right, you can let it sit for 4 to 5 hours and it will give you much more strength. Now here are some of the casting pieces that I did on other molds like trinket molds, etc., where it is very famous to use this molds, but this also works beautifully with all the silicone molds. Now here you can see the frame I have created, and then I'll show you all the Prima molds frame that I have created. And as you can see, it is very easy to break them apart right now because it has not completely cured, and just using my fingers I can remove the excess. Now the pro of this is that it can be demolded fairly quickly. This is again lighter as compared to clays. So the first lightest is resin, then it is this, and then the clays. So your project will be light if you are using this. The con is of course that this will not bend, so this is going to lay flat, okay, because this is a casting thing. It is unlike resin, it will not bend, so you'll always have to work flat. And another pro is that since it dries very quickly, you can demold it faster, but at the same time it can be con also, because since it once it's mixed, you don't have a lot of pot life, you'll have to work quickly as well. So now depending on the pros and cons, you can decide what you like. So that was the third one. And now we move on to the last one, which is air dry clay. Now, since it is clay, again, you'll have to prep your molds with lot of powders, like how I am doing here for the release of clay from the mold. Now, here I am using one of the clays. This is an air dry clay. I'm using the one in white color. Again, the link of all the products will be present in the description below, so you can check the same out. So what I'm doing over here is it comes like in a plastic cling wrap kind of a thing. So as to maintain the moisture of the clay, I'm removing a little bit of it. Now remember, this is air dry clay. So if you keep it open in the air, it will dry out. So immediately, whatever quantity you have removed, put the thing back into a Ziploc pouch, pack it properly as how you had received it, and put it in like a Tupperware airtight box, or in a Ziploc bag or something like that. So what I'm doing over here is, again, since it's clay, you'll have to push it into your molds with a lot of effort, so it will need a lot of your hand muscle power to push it into the molds. However, I feel this is much more lighter as compared to the molded clay. So since it is not as dense as molded clay, this is comparatively easier on your hands as compared to molded. So that is one difference between the two clays. And here I'm showing you both. On the right is a Prima mold and on the left is a Stamperia mold. Stamperia mold is a little bit much deeper as compared to Prima mold. So I just wanted to see how much time does it take to dry, etc. And also, as I said, all four types of molds that I have used, you can use them with all the four types of products that I have shown you here. So the Chinese mold, the plastic Stamperia ones, the silicone Stamperia ones, or the Prima Stamperia ones, you can use all these four type of molds with all the four types of products, that is resin, molded clay, art cast, and the air dry clay. So here you can see how I'm pushing the clay into the mold to kind of make sure that it stays into the mold. And this will normally, you should be able to demold this after 2 to 3 hours. You should be, I mean, after 2 to 3 hours it is still pliable. Since I was using a little bit more deeper molds, I kind of demolded it after 4 hours, and you will see that it is still easy to remove and use. Okay. So again, this the timing is very similar to Artcast for these clay. So depending on what you like, you can use Artcast or air dry clay. This after 3 to 4 hours, it is still shapeable, so you can bend it and shape it in your like curvatured products. It will work really well with those. However, this is clay and it will dry in natural color, like how I was showing you. So you will have to paint it white and then use whatever colors you want to use on top of it. And this is much lighter than the molded clay, but much heavier than the resin and art cast. So depending on what you like, the weight of your project, etc., you can decide what you want. Now comes the time of my final thoughts based on whatever products I have tested and used. So personally, if you ask me, I would go with resin. However, as I said, resin has a lot of like, it's very cumbersome to use, and you have to like take care of a lot of precautions, because at the end of the day it's a chemical. So if you are using resin, make sure that you are doing like tons of molds in one go, so you are kind of sorted for like at least 8 to 10 projects, so you don't have to do it again and again. And the resin is best because it is lightweight and it is quite sturdy as a material. Second, if I have to not use resin, I would probably go with Artcast or air dry clay, depending on, whether I want a bendable project or not. Because if I don't want bendable project and the mold is quite thick, then I'll go with Artcast, because I can easily remove it in 2 to 3 hours if I have an urgent project, and, use it, and it will still give me that lightweight effect of resin. And if I am going to use air dry clay when I want to do like a bendable project, and again it can be removed from mold in 2 to 3 hours, so it's easier to work with. Molded is what I'll use when I want to, work immediately, like within an hour I want it to be demolded and used on my project, then I'll use molded, like whenever I'm doing my lives or whenever I want to complete a project in one go. However, the biggest con of molded is it is very heavy as compared to the resin stuff. So that is one very big con. Personally, I would want to avoid that, because I like to use a lot of products which is like hanging on my walls, etc. So I would not want something which is very heavy, which will make the project fall down. So molded will probably be one of the last one that I'll use. But if I want to use it in urgency and it is something that's going to stand on my desk like a bottle, etc., I would not mind using it. And if I don't have a time, again, I won't mind using it. So here are all the pros and cons that I wanted to discuss. Personally, I use a lot of resin, then I use a lot of art cast or air dry clay, and then in kind of a fix I try and use molded in my project. So that was my take on what you can use. Again, this is, as I said, my opinions. You could have different opinions, and you may work with faster or slower timelines depending on which part of world you stay in. But I hope this video gave you tons of ideas on how you can use different products with silicone molds. I will see you soon with another tutorial. Till then, guys, take care, subscribe, see you soon.